Hey everybody, welcome back. This week we're jumping on into really navigating the energy we're currently in. So, a lot of people are describing kind of this feeling of uncertainty, this feeling of almost like what was no longer fits, what is not quite it, and what's to come is like that future, that energy of, I know I'm meant to be here and I'm not quite there yet. And so, I've encountered a lot of people, specifically in the last few months, who are feeling like relationships no longer fit, the job or career field they're in no longer fit. Maybe friendships around them or even the place they live just isn't quite right anymore. But yet they're in this interim where they don't quite have direction yet. And I know you and I have talked about this, Jess. I am in it. I know a lot of our clients are in it. I feel like collectively we're kind of in that phase where we're birthing something new and it's really uncomfortable being in these times. So, we wanted to kind of just talk more about what we're personally experiencing, what we're noticing, and really how to navigate being in this space of just the unknown.
Yeah, I think you'd referred to it as the void. And I looked up the meaning just before, we jumped on, and the void is, I mean, it's simple. It's described as not valid, which is interesting, and completely empty. And I think that is the hardest part and the hardest place for people to be. And I was telling you, and I think you and I have these conversations a lot about how we both experience moments of this too, because the world is shifting, energy is shifting. Um, I don't think anybody can look at the landscape of life right now and say this is what it's always been. It's If it's always been, we just haven't noticed, and we've all been asleep. I think this is very new and necessary. And so, um, I know with my clients in the professional world, what I do, it's kind of like business therapy. So I know you work with clients very intimately, childhood trauma, regression, that kind of stuff. I do things a little bit different, and that's why we're such an interesting pairing. But I know my clients, and some of them listen to this, they're going through these shifts on a personal level, which as business owners, we understand that as humans. And then they're seeing the shift represented also in the landscape of their business. And so, like you said, what was no longer fits. I think that is probably the best summary for it. What was no longer fits. It's like wearing a shoe that's two sizes too small or two sizes too big. We're stumbling around trying to wear the same shoe, and it's not the same foot. So I think I like the cadence of just taking it some topics at a time. I think both of us have a goal with our audience to try to bring, number one, a sense of grounding. We do that for each other. That's why we do this. Let's give you like a sense of peace and grounding, maybe a new idea or a concept that you can bring into your work life, your personal life, whatever it is, and leave with a way to maybe manage it. So if we can kind of tackle it that way, I would love to maybe just start with how does it feel when we're in this void of, I'm not really sure where I go now because the shoe clearly isn't fitting, but now I have no shoes. I like metaphors. So now I'm shoeless. And and so from your perspective, Angie, how does that show up for people? How does that show up for you?
I mean, when you're using the shoe metaphor, I think, it's walking barefoot on rocks. It's uncomfortable. Your little feet are not used to, you know, hitting the earth like that and all the sharp edges and all the discomfort. And, a lot of my clients right now, and even, I'll just say friends and clients in general, a lot of relationship strife. So whether it is friendships that are starting to have more contention, where people are just no longer resonating on the same frequency. I had lunch with a good friend recently, and we were talking about that, especially when people are on a spiritual awakening path. This happens when you first wake up, but I think collectively, all of us are feeling this, whether you're awake or not. You know what I mean? Awake on the spiritual path. So, it was this person's recognition of lifelong friends that they've had, where recently they got together and it was as though there was no common ground.
Mm.
Like they could no longer fit into the dynamic and expectations of those friendships because they had quit drinking alcohol. They want to talk about purpose of life, like big concepts. And, the friends were kind of still in this 3D paradigm, which is okay. We live in this world, so we can't negate that. And that's a part of the spiritual path is integrating that where you have this level of awareness and you can still show up and be around people, that maybe have different experiences than you. So it was kind of navigating, are these friendships that are going to continue? And that's something that you may not know. Certainly if it becomes a distinct um, difference in values, difference in, I had a friend use the word like-heartedness, right? If you're not like-hearted, that's challenging. You don't have to be like-minded. Like, I don't want to be friends with people that only think what I think. I want people that have a broad view because that's how I learn. I challenge my beliefs and I grow. And so it's looking at those relationships and saying, are these people that still resonate within like this like-hearted feel? Can we still feel safe with each other? Can we still have conversations? Can we still feel support even though we have different experiences right now? So that's one thing, in friendships. But that also pertains to romantic relationships, right? Like to the viewers that are not listening or that are watching this, or rather listening, not watching, it's going to be hard to kind of see what I'm doing. But, I think of relationships as like kind of coming together and then you kind of go apart for a while and you kind of come together and then you kind of go apart. And that's the growth journey for a lot of people where, people are kind of coming together and they're having this acceleration of growth. And then maybe one person keeps growing, the other person kind of falls back a little bit, but then they can catch up, right? Or they don't. And then the relationship begins to dissolve. And so that's in the realm of relationships that people might be experiencing. And only, the person listening to this can discern what's in their best interest. Now, I do think we are in a time where things are amplifying. So if you already had a lot of dysfunction in those relationships, they're going to be a lot more intense. Like that starkness is going to get a lot brighter, bolder, more obvious, louder. And so that all of this pertains to career. The things in your career that no longer fit are going to be a lot louder, a lot brighter, a lot bigger in your face. And it's uncomfortable. I think what all of us feel right now, because I am in it myself in a variety of ways, is like we just have to sit with it. Like there is no escaping this right now. It's uncomfortable. It's continuing to put one foot in front of the next on that rocky, painful gravel and saying, all right, for today, like this is what I can do. And what's hard is I was having a conversation with a friend earlier today is finding joy in every moment. And I'll be honest, when you're in the pits, like a lot of us are right now, it's hard. It is so hard to find joy. Sometimes when you feel like you're in a really dark place, but it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a glimmer. It can be your child's laugh, or something silly that someone said, or even just gratitude that, we live in the Midwest and it's in the 30s in the middle of December, right? Like that's lovely because normally here it's cold and it's snowy and awful. I mean, maybe it's beautiful, but there's a lot to it here where it's a personal journey. But again, I think it's a collective journey because so many of us are in it. And it's almost like this collective shadow work of we're going to sit because new things are birthing, but they're not ready.
Right. My clients, so on the personal level, this is one thing. And what gets hard in the business world is working with small business. Life and business, they coexist intimately. There is no real corporate separation. In fact, I'm going to say that model is kind of going away as people wake up to their own humanity. It's very hard to separate the cold corporate world from humanity. And so navigating this right now is really interesting. So you talk about the discomfort of being the individual in the navigation of this, and you're right, very very uncomfortable. Now I work with these business owners that are going through this. So, what a call looks like, what a meeting looks like with them, as especially as I've worked with them for a long time, is there's a trust there, and so they will unpack personal stuff, and then we have to turn the attention to the business stuff, and that is another unpacking. And what I'm going to tell you is that it is so difficult, because it's happening in both areas on significant levels. And the tricky part is, on the intimate side, it's your spouse, it's your children. Everybody is feeling this. So things are getting chaotic. They're getting uprooted. And there's a dying away over here, which you just talked about. And then the same thing is happening in your business where suddenly, these business owners are like, I can't do this with a staff person anymore. And I don't know why they're showing up like this. Well, they're going through a thing, right? So everybody's going through this individual thing. And we have this weird jigsaw puzzle of chaos. And we're constantly trying to put it back together. But like you said, there is so much good that comes out of it. What I am seeing more and more, and of course, these are new paths for all of us, including myself. So the business acumen is just one piece, but now I have to lean into my discernment, my intuition, and the more spiritual side of myself. And what I'm seeing is that my clients can go through all their stuff. They're purging all this stuff. And some days they show up, I don't know what I'm going to get, and they're a mess. And my job is just to help bring them back to ground zero, back to themselves. And the ones that are getting there, they're getting this gift. I don't know what you want to call it. They're getting rewarded with either the void getting filled with something better because they allowed the void to be there, or they're walking into the darkness and they're coming around a corner they've never been to, and there's something there, a new person, a new idea, whatever it is. And so we're seeing just a lot of this, a lot of the ups and downs, the waves of, this is really scary, this is totally unknown, I don't know where I'm at, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing this. I have never heard that so much in the years of business that I've been in. I think we've all said it. Like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Because it is so much more challenging or uncomfortable than it has been. But there is good in there. And this is all happening for us. I think a client said it in a way, I cannot remember exactly his terms, but essentially that we're just getting refined. We're just being refined. The fire burns away the chaff. We're just getting refined. Iron sharpens iron. And that's why we all need to be kind of gravitating towards what is meant for us, whether it be the employees we need, the family that we're going to hold on to or not. So in that, let's just talk about the other big aspect happening right now. We are, just on the doorstep of our traditional holidays where we have family gatherings. There's, again, what has been and what is now. I have heard a lot of people saying they're just not feeling that same thing anymore. They're feeling a pull away from these traditions. But it is hard because it's like we're grieving something, but we haven't let go yet. And then we have the dynamics of maybe we're letting go of family relationships. Maybe we already have. So any thoughts about that, Angie, navigating this time of year?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I know so many people who, aren't putting up if you celebrate Christmas, right? Those are predominantly the people I'm around who celebrate Christmas. So if you're of other faith, I'd be curious kind of how this is going for you. But a lot of people, myself included, it's like we have a tree up. That's the only decoration we have. I don't care. This is a year I literally don't care. Um, and I just doesn't have the same energy, the same magic, the same I don't know. I'm not feeling it this year. Plus it came up, it's coming up really fast. And again, those of us who live in the Midwest, we're used to like white weather, lots of snow, the feeling, right? There's a distinct feeling that we have when we live in the area we do that also kind of accompanies the holidays for many of us. And so a lot of individuals I know who are like, yeah, I just don't care. I'm doing what I can do minimally to get through. And I think it also is this paradigm of pushing the conventional, or rather the traditional ways of doing things when we understand, I mean, the historical um, background of Christmas, like why we have the tree, why we decorate it. Some of the things that are actually kind of a little nefarious, it's not rooted in Christianity, right? Like some of this, when you kind of start to understand that, it takes away some of the magic. And it's also like, this is a little bit of a messed up tradition. Um, and there's a lot of questions around, okay, who decided it was Christ's birth? Is this even historically accurate? You know, and I think a lot of us more are, how can we come together and celebrate family, hold gratitude together, right? This is not a Christian thing. This is not a Jewish thing. This is not a different religion or spiritual thing. This is a people thing. How can we come together with those we love? And that's tricky too, because many of us are navigating very complicated family dynamics. I know you and I are both doing that. And, um, I've kind of taken it to with those relationships that if it disturbs my peace, it's not in my life right now. And maybe at some point those relationships can be re-entered, but right now that's just not where I'm at. And I'm really working to protect my own energy, my own sanity, my own family unit. And I'm unwilling to let people in that space that can disturb that. Now, I know that's not that easy for a lot of people who are navigating much bigger families, a lot more dynamics. But ultimately, we all have the choice and the power to decide who gets our energy and who doesn't. Um, and that comes with the consequences of deciding, right? Like, I don't want these people around because they're disturbing my peace. There's a lot of drama here. Um, but that also leaves a void. Speaking of the void, like you have a void of wanting people to be a certain way that they're not. And that's a grief thing. You and I talk a lot about having our own, you know, um, interesting relationships with family. Like that, the little person inside of us, our little inner child, has this longingness for people showing up a certain way. And when they don't, that's hurtful. And we want it to be different. And we have to learn how to reparent ourselves when those around us maybe didn't do it in the way our little kid deserved or how we would have done it with our own children. And so, as we go into the holidays, I really think it is a pick your battle. You get to decide what disturbs your peace. You get to decide what relationships you allow to infiltrate you. I talked with someone on Friday who there was a lot of contention around, what happened in 2020 within the family. And they made the decision to just not invite a few people for the holidays because there couldn't be an open dialogue of different viewpoints that were respected. It was very polarized still. And, I think a lot of what's shaking out right now in the world is helping us to see we are all so much more alike than we are different, and that there are these things happening that make us not like each other, that are so fake and so it's psychological warfare. Um, Yet, you know, not everybody has the ability to kind of pull themselves up and eagle eye view and understand that there are bigger forces kind of orchestrating this, right? Because what would happen if we all got along and if we all decided like we can have different experiences and that's okay? Like that would be, I mean, we would have world peace in days.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it would be peace on earth and goodwill towards men or something like that. I think that's in a song that we might sing during this time of year versus spend all your money, get super stressed out.
yes,
I'd be interested to know. I think this is the time of year when a lot of people have mental health issues arise, and I can fully understand why it's such a backwards world where we can sing songs about joy and happiness and all these things, but we're not really bearing the fruit of that in
right,
running the rat race and thinking we're going to control outcomes with other people. There's just a lot, and I do think that's a good way to look at it. Like if the world is upside down,
hmm,
right now, everything is just kind of fallen out of the purse. We're emptying it, and
hmm,
so the nice part is though that if you are willing to accept that and you're willing to allow it to happen, we get to fill it back up with whatever we choose. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean it's going to come easily necessarily, because, everything has to kind of go at that point, right? You're starting with a slate that's got to be clean. And I know for me, and so I don't want anybody to feel like they're struggling to let go. Here's the thing with me, even with you, I can let go, and then I get so far away from things and I turn around and I look back at it, and then I want it back, and I want it to be different. And then I'm reminded one more time, painfully, generally, that it's not different. You can keep walking away and it's going to hurt still when you come back. And that's okay. It's okay. You can keep purging more and more of that deep pain if you'd like, or you can keep walking and have faith that it's going to get filled up with something better. But that's the way it's going right now. And I do believe that is the void we're really referring to. And the world is going through the void. We're in
Yeah.
the eye of the hurricane. This is the empty space in the middle where it's too quiet sometimes. And then we step into the edge and it's just wild chaos. We're in a storm. It's like nothing we've seen in our lifetime now. Although I would gather, collectively, we've all seen many storms over many lifetimes. Um, this is a really important topic right now, and I believe that everybody is feeling it. Some people are trying to do what they've always done and just kind of ignore it, and it's just going to keep knocking louder because the transformation has to happen
Yeah. And
one
it
way or
is,
another.
I mean, I still like to come back to the example of 2020 because in the last, several years, that's been the biggest kind of halt of humanity we've had. And, not that what we're walking into is that again, but that was a time of, I think a lot of people did kind of ignore the knocking, but there were a lot of people that were jolted awake, jolted to like look at what happened. And again, I'm not talking about the medical side even, but just the isolation of all of us, the, toilet paper gate, like, some of the just the shenanigans that happened in 2020 and like kind of look at it and be like, oh my goodness, like, are we going to transcend this or are we going to perpetuate these cycles of division? Um, a lot of people were forced to kind of look at themselves and then choose differently, whether you took the high road or you continue to perpetuate that. And I think we're in it again. And again, 2020 was so in our face that I feel like the energy of right now is as intense as I shouldn't say that, but it feels to me almost as intense as 2020.
Yes.
Now, there's not a tangible physical thing I can say is happening. There's a lot of stuff in the world certainly happening. But the energy of it feels like it's that in your face. Like you have to look at what's going on within yourself. And, even this is a little bit of a side tangent, but, as we walk into the holidays, there was a really great documentary. I believe it was called Buy, The Shopping Conspiracy,
Mm.
something like that on Netflix. And it was about consumerism and like the damage that we are doing to our planet with all of these things that cannot be recycled. The majority of our plastics, despite what they say on the containers, are not recyclable. Like our landfills are filling up with all these products, with these fiat, clothing from these stores like Timu and, Marshalls that last a year and then they're in a landfill. And, again, to people that are waking up, it's like we also have deep empathy for the planet. And, like, okay, but that sweater is never going to give me the true joy of inner peace, right? My own inner peace. Like, nothing external can ever provide that. Can it be fun for a second? Sure. But is that what really brings absolute joy and peace? And, so that's also, I think, in a lot of people's faces too. Like, this is such a consumeristic holiday. And even, coming into like, Valentine's Day, right? It's the Hallmark holiday. Buy candy, buy all these cards and all these things that again go into waste and landfills. Um, but it's everything is directing us to turn inwards, and that's uncomfortable, especially when a lot of us who've had significant trauma have coped by disassociation. And that is something that I'm still actively working through, right? And this
Right.
is something I'm very transparent about because it's my lived experience and I'm still going through it. I'm like nearly 40 and I'm still healing from things that happened years ago. And that's not that it defines me, but it leaves scars, it leaves pain, and all of us are in that. And again, if we don't look at it, that's not to say we have to sit in it and be overtaken by it, but we need to feel it. We need to feel it because that's how it also moves through, right? We're so used to suppressing everything down because we were told, girls don't cry, or, girls are seen, not heard, or little boys don't cry. All these like
Yeah.
messages about how we are supposed to be that don't acknowledge that it's okay to be angry. It's
Yeah.
okay to be upset. It's okay to be bothered by people who've hurt us.
Mm.
And also that we don't have to let it continue to pull us down, define us, and really make our lives a living hell. So again, if you're in this void right now, if you're in this space, which I'm guessing you are, all of us, like I will tell you every single day because I'm telling myself this every single day, just keep going, one foot in front of the next. That's it. That is
Yeah.
all we are being called to do right now because there may not be clarity for a little while for many of us. And, having kind of been in my own void for nearly a year now, I'm getting real impatient. And if you guys know me, that is not a strong suit of mine. Patience is not a strong suit. And I'm being challenged with it. And that's okay because that's also stretching me in a new way. A lot of us in a new way where we can't have that instant gratification. We can't have instant answers. There's no way around but through.
Yeah. We have to go through it. And so this will be a great time to maybe just talk about what are some ways we can go through it? How do we get through it? Right now, I think we're in, and I think it's going to get a little more intense. I don't really anticipate that one day it's just going to poof. Like every little dust particle is going to settle, and we're going to rewind to 2010 or whatever it was. I think we're gonna stay in some intense energy as this pressure cooker continues. So a few things we can do. I'll share a couple that I do that really, really help me. Get outside. That has been a huge thing. Just yesterday, I was telling you, I went out and worked on a ranch with some friends for about 5 hours. It was chilly. I was around animals. I was in the dirt. And you know what? I wasn't around any technology. I wasn't absorbed with any narratives. I was literally hands on outside on the ground. Highly, highly recommend that. Let the cold air, if you're in a cold climate, or the warm air, if you're in a warm one, get on you and feel what's real. So that's one thing that I really like to do. The other one that I find very helpful when I get into that void and it's a bit of a spiral fest is really just kind of find a way to recount what all the positive things that have really influenced me in the recent times, or as long as I can remember, if that's helpful. It's very hard to feel despair and gratitude simultaneously. So, gratitude is a higher vibration if we want to think of it like the frequency war, whereas shame, guilt, sadness are really low. So, if we find gratitude, we're naturally not going to feel shame and guilt and fear and all those lower vibration things. So, those are two things, a list of things I'm grateful for, and getting out in the elements of earth and just being detached from this higher tech and higher information type stuff, at least for a while. It's good to reset.
Yeah. And on that, I think, if you're someone who watches the news, turn it off. Like there's nothing you need to know happening on there. And it is sensationalized. It is with deep intention to hypnotize you into fear. And there's a lot of reasons you could be in fear right now, potentially, but there's a lot of reasons to be really hopeful. So, a media detox, whether that's TV, social media, any of those things that are contributing to you not feeling well. And I used to be someone who justified, well, I have to know what's going on, especially in 2020. I was a frontline nurse. I thought I needed to know the ticker that was happening, the death ticker and all these like numbers, things. I thought I needed to know that. And man, did it wreck my mental health. And that's the same with what we're experiencing right now. So, really limiting your time. And I will say that to myself over and over because it's really easy to get into that, trance of just scrolling and just kind of losing time. So, limiting that is, huge. Working out has always been a huge outlet for me. And in over the last years, it's transitioned. I used to run all the time. My body is not, my hormones don't like that. And that's devastating for me, but I can still get out and walk. I can still even just spend 30 minutes on a treadmill or outside if the weather allows it. Just that, to me is enough of a meditative experience, or meditation prayer, right? I've been finding myself a lot more lately going into prayer. And if that's not your thing, then just think of it as meditation. It doesn't have to be a certain way. And I also don't think of meditation or prayer necessarily as like a religious or spiritual thing. It's me just acknowledging something beyond me, and that I want support. I'm asking for support. I'm asking for guidance, but also it's comforting. It's like being the little girl before bed, saying my nighttime prayers. Like it's just comforting to me. Um, and so those are really huge practices. And if you have the finances, a massage, a little spa day, like some kind of a little treat for self care can be amazing. And if you can't afford that, get some Epsom salt and have an Epsom salt bath. That is so grounding. That is so refreshing. And, for other people, it might be dancing, singing, skiing or there's so many things you can do. And, as a friend reminded me today, sometimes we have to force ourselves to do that because if we're in a really dark place, like a lot of us feel we are, um, it can feel like nothing is fun. And, it's kind of like working out. The more you do it, the more it reinforces the joy you get from it. It's the same thing in these times. So find a way that you can reconnect. Again, nature is so healing. So if you can get outside, that's such a great way right now. And, hug a tree. Like trees have such a power,
Literally.
like literally. And I didn't understand that until a couple of years ago. But, when we live in the Midwest where grounding is not necessarily easy, um, taking your little bare hands and hugging a tree can allow that energy exchange, that grounding uh, frequency of the earth to go through your body. And it's so healing. So, again, as our listeners, I'm sure you have a bazillion more ideas. We always love and welcome feedback on that. But be curious, what everybody is doing as well to kind of support themselves because engaging in the low vibration things like, drinking or just eating really shitty foods or doom scrolling. Some of the things that I also will say, like I do engage in at times and I catch myself like, nope, that's not helping right now.
Yep.
Like those aren't going to get us through these times. It really is making sure we're taking care of our mind, body, and spirit right now. And being mindful of who you're around. If you're around people that are constantly in fear, constantly saying things that are inciting concern in you, check a different crowd. I think you and I always say every episode, our goal is that we can look at what's happening from a higher perspective, meaning there is no fear. As you said, this is happening for us. So whatever is coming in the future for us, whatever is happening in the coming days, weeks, months, it's all happening for us. And it may not make sense right now, but it is trusting the process. And we can look back on our life and understand why a lot of things happened as they did. So when people kind of want to challenge that, I just encourage you to look back in the times where you felt like the situation was impossible and you still made it through and maybe even better than you thought.
Yeah. Yeah. This is about just deepening our own discernment and all those things you listed and I talked about. They quiet the mind and they allow the voice of your highest self and your inner wisdom to really shine through. So take that time, do that. We know things are hard. We go through our own stuff and we just really we want to be here as a support system. And of course, talk about a lot of these different topics from that high point of view of life, work, the balance of just navigating these rougher waters. So there are good, amazing things happening. But we have to get through this to really earn that and see that. So another great episode, and I'm sure there'll be more about this because I just don't see it letting up. So hang in there, everyone, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.